The blood on her bare feet had long since dried by the time she stumbled into the underground parking garage, wearing nothing but a torn nightgown and the purple bruises around her throat like a grotesque necklace. Tessa Thornwell didn't know where she was anymore. The city streets had blurred together after she'd fled through her bedroom window 3 hours ago, her husband's drunken roars still echoing in her ears. She'd run until her lungs burned, until her feet bled, until she'd found an open stairwell leading down into darkness and followed it like a desperate animal seeking shelter. The garage was massive, stretching endlessly in all directions, filled with vehicles that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. Dim lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that made her flinch. Her legs finally gave out near a sleek black car that looked like it belonged in a museum. She collapsed against the concrete wall, shaking so violently her teeth chattered despite the summer heat that had followed her, down from the streets above. Her mind kept replaying the moment Michael's hand had closed around her throat, squeezing, until stars had burst behind her eyes. She'd thought she was going to die. She'd been so sure of it that when his grip had loosened for just a second, when he'd stumbled back to grab his whiskey bottle, some primal survival instinct had taken over. She'd run. She didn't know how long she sat there, hugging her knees to her chest, trying to make herself as small as possible. Time felt meaningless. All she knew was cold terror and the desperate hope that Michael wouldn't find her, wouldn't drag her back to that house where she'd spent 2 years walking on eggshells and learning exactly how to duck when he swung. The sound of footsteps made her freeze. They were measured, purposeful, echoing through the cavernous space with an authority that sent fresh panic coursing through her veins. Tessa pressed herself harder against the wall, praying to become invisible, praying the shadows would swallow her whole. The footsteps stopped. "Who's there?" The voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent she couldn't quite place, ancient somehow, like wind through old stone corridors. Tessa squeezed her eyes shut, holding her breath. Maybe if she stayed perfectly still, whoever it was would leave. Maybe she could disappear. "I can hear your heartbeat." The voice was closer now, and something in its tone made her skin prickle with awareness of something other, something fundamentally wrong. "It's racing like a trapped bird." She forced her eyes open and immediately wished she hadn't. The man standing 10 feet away wasn't human. That was her first coherent thought, ridiculous as it sounded. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with a presence that seemed to fill the entire garage despite his stillness. His hair fell past his shoulders in a cascade of pure white, and his skin held the same pale luminescence, like moonlight given form. He wore an immaculate black suit that probably cost more than her former car, she corrected herself bitterly, since Michael had totaled it last month in a rage. But it was his eyes that trapped her, held her frozen like a rabbit before a wolf. They were crimson, deep burning red that seemed to see straight through her skin to her bones. "Please," she heard herself whisper, her voice hoarse from strangulation. "Please don't hurt me." Something flickered across his perfect, angular features. His gaze traveled over her slowly, taking in her torn nightgown, her bleeding feet, the bruises painting her skin in shades of purple and yellow. When his eyes returned to her throat, to the clear handprint marking where Michael had tried to kill her, his expression went absolutely cold. "Who did this to you?" His voice was soft now, dangerous in its quietness. Tessa shook her head, unable to form words. Her throat ached abominably. The man moved closer, each step fluid and predatory, and she realized with growing terror that she'd been right. He wasn't human at all. His movements were too smooth, too perfect, like watching silk pour through darkness. When he crouched before her, bringing himself to her eye level, she caught the scent of him, snow and cedar and something metallic that made her think of old coins. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said, and impossibly, she believed him. "My name is Justinian Xerxes. This is my private garage. You're trespassing, but given your condition, I'm willing to overlook it if you tell me who put their hands on you." She started, then stopped, fresh fear lancing through her. What if he made her go back? What if he called the police and they called Michael, and he convinced them she was crazy like he always did? "I can't. I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'll go right now." She tried to stand, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She managed to get halfway up before they buckled, and she would have fallen if Justinian hadn't caught her. His hands were gentle but impossibly strong, steadying her with no visible effort. "You're not going anywhere," he said firmly. "You can barely stand. When did you last eat?" Tessa tried to remember. Yesterday morning? The day before? Michael had been on a 3-day bender, and she'd learned long ago not to draw attention to herself by cooking when he was in one of his moods. "I don't know," she admitted. Justinian studied her for a long moment, his crimson eyes unreadable. Then he did something that shocked her. He shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It was warm from his body heat and smelled like him, enveloping her in unexpected comfort. "Can you walk if I help you?" he asked. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, somewhere you can rest without fear." He paused, then added quietly, "I give you my word that no harm will come to you under my protection. A king's word, which is unbreakable." "King?" The word came out confused, slightly hysterical. Maybe she'd hit her head when she was running. Maybe she was hallucinating in some alley, dying from exposure while her mind invented elaborate fantasies. "I'll explain everything once you're somewhere more comfortable," Justinian said. "For now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" It was insane. She didn't know this man, this creature, at all. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her chest ache. Genuine concern, untouched by any ulterior motive. It was so foreign after 2 years with Michael that she wanted to weep. "Okay," she whispered. He helped her to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist to steady her. She limped beside him across the garage, each step sending sharp pain through her cut and battered feet. They approached what looked like a service elevator, and Justinian pressed his palm against a scanner she hadn't noticed. The doors opened immediately, revealing an interior that was more luxurious than most people's living rooms, with mahogany panels and soft lighting. As they ascended, Tessa's exhaustion began to catch up with her. The adrenaline that had been keeping her upright was fading, leaving behind bone-deep weariness that made her sway against Justinian's supporting arm. She felt him steady her, heard him say something in a language she didn't recognize, ancient and fluid. The elevator doors opened onto a space that made her breath catch. They stepped into an entrance hall that belonged in a Gothic palace, not in whatever building she'd stumbled into. The floors were polished black marble, shot through with veins of silver. Enormous candelabras held real candles that burned with unusual steadiness, casting flickering shadows across walls hung with tapestries that looked centuries old. Arched doorways led deeper into what she was beginning to realize was a massive residence, each one offering glimpses of similarly opulent rooms beyond. "This is your home?" she asked faintly. "One of them," Justinian replied. "I maintain several residences throughout the city. This one is the most secure." He guided her through a doorway into a sitting room dominated by a fireplace large enough to stand in. The furniture was all dark wood and deep burgundy upholstery, beautiful and somehow intimidating. Justinian helped her to a sofa, and the moment she sat down, the cushions seemed to envelope her in softness she'd forgotten existed. "Wait here," he instructed. "I'll bring you something to eat and drink and medical supplies for your feet." "You don't have to," Tessa started. "Yes, I do." His voice left no room for argument. "You're injured and starving, and you sought shelter in my territory. That makes you my responsibility, whether you intended it or not." Before she could process that statement, he was gone, moving with that unnatural speed that confirmed everything her instincts were screaming. Not human. Definitely not human. Vampire, her mind supplied helpfully, and she almost laughed at the absurdity. Vampires weren't real. They were stories, myths, Halloween costumes, except she'd seen his eyes, inhuman and burning. She'd felt the wrongness radiating from him, the sense of something ancient wearing human skin. She was still trying to make sense of it when Justinian returned carrying a silver tray laden with food. There were fresh strawberries and grapes, cheese and crackers, delicate sandwiches cut into triangles, and a glass of water that made her realize how desperately thirsty she was. He set it on the low table before her, then knelt with a first aid kit, reaching for her feet. "I can do it myself," Tessa protested weakly. "You can barely keep your eyes open," Justinian said. "Let me help." There was something so matter-of-fact about the way he said it that she couldn't find the energy to argue. She watched, slightly dazed, as he cleaned her cut feet with gentle efficiency, his touch so careful it barely hurt. His white hair fell forward over his shoulder as he worked, and she noticed details she'd missed before. The elegant point to his ears, the way his skin seemed to emit a faint glow, the complete absence of any visible veins or color variation that normal skin would have. "You're really a vampire," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes?" He didn't look up from bandaging her left foot. "Does that frighten you?" "I don't know. Should it?" "Most humans find us terrifying." He finished with her foot and moved to the other one. "It's a reasonable response given our nature." "Are you going to drink my blood?" The question hung in the air between them. Justinian's hands stilled for a moment, then resumed their careful work. "No," he said quietly. "I don't feed from unwilling sources, ever. It's one of my most fundamental laws." "Laws?" "I told you I was a king. I rule the vampire realm within this city, and have done so for the last 300 years. He secured the bandage and sat back, finally meeting her eyes. "There are protocols, hierarchies, rules that govern how we interact with humanity. One of my primary laws is that feeding must be consensual. Any vampire under my jurisdiction who breaks that law faces execution." Tessa absorbed this, her exhausted brain struggling to keep up. "So there are a lot of you? Vampires?" "More than humans know, fewer than humans fear." He stood, gesturing to the food. "Eat, please. We can continue this conversation once you've gotten some sustenance." She realized she was ravenous. The first strawberry burst on her tongue with sweetness so intense she almost moaned. She ate quickly, barely tasting the food as she shoved it into her mouth, manners forgotten in the face of desperate hunger. Justinian watched her with an expression she couldn't read, something between concern and anger, though the anger didn't seem directed at her. When she'd finally emptied the tray, she leaned back against the cushions, feeling marginally more human. The water had helped her throat, though it still ached when she swallowed. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't have to do any of this." "Yes, I did," Justinian repeated. He settled into the chair across from her, his posture straight and regal. "You came to me for sanctuary even if you didn't know it. In vampire culture that creates certain obligations. You're under my protection now." "I didn't mean to trespass. I was just running, and I found the stairs, and I thought I could hide from your husband." His voice went cold again on the last word. "The one who strangled you and beat you badly enough that you fled wearing almost nothing in the middle of the night." Tessa touched her throat unconsciously, wincing at the tenderness. "How did you know it was my husband?" "The tan line on your ring finger, where you recently removed a wedding band. The way you flinched when I mentioned calling the authorities, you're afraid they won't believe you, which suggests this has happened before and been dismissed. The specific pattern of bruises suggests intimate partner violence from someone who knows exactly how to hurt you without killing you." His red eyes burned into hers. "How long has this been happening?" 2 years, she heard herself say. "Since about 6 months after we got married. He drinks, and when he drinks, he gets angry. And when he gets angry," she trailed off, unable to finish. "He hurts you." Justinian's voice was utterly flat. "Tell me his name." "Why?" "Because I'm going to ensure he never touches you again." The certainty in his voice sent a chill down her spine. "You can't. I mean, if something happens to him, I'll be the first person the police suspect. I'm his wife. They'll think nothing will be traced back to you." Justinian leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I have resources beyond human law enforcement. Your husband has committed crimes that violate not just human law, but also the ancient codes that govern how we interact with your kind. He's caused you to seek vampire protection, which puts him under my jurisdiction." "I don't understand." "The territory you entered, my garage, my building, my domain, is considered sovereign vampire ground under treaties that have existed for centuries. By seeking shelter here, you've invoked laws older than this city. Your husband's violence drove you to us, which makes him accountable to vampire justice." He paused, then added more gently, "But I won't act without your consent. This is your choice, Tessa. Give me his name and location, and I swear to you he'll never hurt anyone again. Or don't, and I'll simply ensure you're protected going forward. Either way, you're safe here." Tessa's mind reeled. Part of her wanted to tell him everything, to give him Michael's name and address and let this terrifyingly powerful creature handle what she'd never been strong enough to handle herself. But another part, the part that had been systematically broken down over 2 years of abuse, whispered that she didn't deserve this help, that she'd probably done something to deserve Michael's anger, that she was being dramatic. "I need to think," she said finally. Justinian inclined his head. "Of course. You've been through trauma and you're exhausted. Let me show you to a bedroom where you can rest. We'll discuss everything else after you've slept." He helped her up again, and she realized she was wearing nothing but her torn nightgown under his jacket. Embarrassment flooded through her, but if Justinian noticed her discomfort, he gave no sign. He led her through the residence. She couldn't think of it as merely an apartment, not with its grand scale and palatial decoration, to a bedroom that made her want to cry. It was beautiful. The bed was enormous, with posts carved from dark wood that reached toward a ceiling painted with stars. The linens were deep blue, soft enough that touching them made her fingers tingle. Heavy curtains covered what she assumed were windows, blocking out all light. A door stood ajar, revealing a bathroom tiled in marble. "There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit you well enough," Justinian said. "Toiletries in the bathroom. Take whatever you need. Sleep as long as you require." "Why are you being so kind to me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You don't even know me." Justinian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of centuries. "Because I know what it is to be powerless, to be at the mercy of someone stronger who uses that strength to cause pain. Because I built my realm on the principle that power should protect, not destroy. And because no one, human or vampire, deserves to live in fear of someone who claims to love them." Tears burned behind Tessa's eyes. She blinked them back furiously, not wanting to break down in front of this stranger who'd shown her more genuine compassion in an hour than her husband had in 2 years. "Get some rest," Justinian said softly. "I'll be here when you wake. You're safe now, Tessa, I promise you that." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Tessa stood in the center of the room, his jacket still wrapped around her shoulders, and finally let herself cry. She cried for everything she'd lost, for the woman she'd been before Michael's fists had taught her to make herself small and quiet. She cried from relief and terror and exhaustion and the overwhelming strangeness of finding shelter with a vampire king who treated her broken body with more respect than her own husband ever had. Eventually, the tears stopped. She stumbled to the bathroom and showered, washing away the blood and grime, watching the water circle the drain in pink spirals. The wardrobe did indeed contain clothes, all in styles that suggested they were kept for guests rather than regular wear. She found soft sleep pants and a shirt that hung loosely on her frame, then collapsed into the bed. Sleep claimed her immediately, pulling her under into darkness that was, for the first time in years, free from fear. She woke to silence so complete it was disorienting. No sounds of traffic, no neighbors, no Michael stumbling drunk through the house, just perfect, peaceful quiet. The room was still dark, the heavy curtains blocking any indication of what time it might be. Tessa lay still for a moment, half convinced she'd dreamed everything: the escape, the garage, the impossibly beautiful vampire who'd promised her protection. Then she moved, and her body's aches reminded her it had all been real. Her throat still hurt. Her feet throbbed despite the bandages, and she was lying in the most comfortable bed she'd ever experienced, in a vampire king's residence, because she'd finally found the courage to run. She got up slowly, testing her feet. They hurt, but the pain was manageable. She found the door and opened it cautiously, peering out into a hallway lit by more of those steady candles. Following the hall back the way she remembered coming, she eventually found her way to the sitting room. Justinian was there, standing by the fireplace with a book in his hands. He'd changed clothes, now wearing dark slacks and a white shirt that made his pale skin and hair seem even more otherworldly. He looked up as she entered, and something in his expression softened. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Better, still sore, but better." She hesitated in the doorway. "What time is it?" "Evening. You slept for nearly 14 hours. He set the book aside. "Are you hungry again?" She was, she realized. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not." He moved past her, gesturing for her to follow. "Come, I'll make you something proper to eat." The kitchen was as magnificent as the rest of the residence, all marble counters and professional appliances. Tessa watched in amazement as Justinian moved through it with comfortable efficiency, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator that could have fed a restaurant. "You cook?" she asked. "I thought vampires didn't eat regular food." "We don't need to, but we can if we choose. I find the practice meditative." He set a pan on the stove, adding butter that immediately began to sizzle. "I've had 3 centuries to perfect various skills. Cooking is one of the more useful ones." 300 years, Tessa repeated, trying to wrap her mind around it. "That's longer than America has existed." "Indeed. I was already ancient when this city was founded." He cracked eggs into the pan with one hand, whisking them with the other. "I've watched it grow from a small settlement to a metropolis, seen technologies develop that would have seemed like magic in my youth. The world changes, but certain fundamentals remain constant." "Like what?" "Like the fact that the strong tend to prey on the weak unless there are consequences, like the importance of sanctuary and protection, like the way violence, once started, rarely stops on its own." He plated the omelet, adding fresh herbs and toast, then handed it to her. "Sit, eat, then we should talk about what comes next." Tessa settled at the kitchen island, the marble cool under her forearms. The food was delicious, perfectly cooked and seasoned. She ate more slowly this time, savoring it. "What does come next?" she asked between bites. "I can't stay here forever. I need to figure out what to do, where to go. I don't have any money. Michael controlled all our accounts. I don't have identification, credit cards, anything. It's all back at the house." "Then we'll retrieve it," Justinian said calmly. "Or rather, I'll have someone retrieve it. You're not going back there." "Michael will notice. He'll call the police, report a break-in." "Let him." Justinian's voice held an edge of steel. "I want you to understand something, Tessa. The moment you crossed into my territory seeking shelter, you became mine to protect. That's not a figure of speech or a casual offer. It's an absolute declaration under vampire law. Your husband has no claim on you anymore. None. If he attempts to come after you, if he even tries to find you, he'll answer to me personally." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, she felt something loosen in her chest, a knot of constant tension she'd carried for so long, she'd forgotten it was there. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why do you care so much? You don't know me. For all you know, I could be lying about everything." "You're not lying. I can hear the truth in your heartbeat, see it in the way you move, like someone expecting a blow at any moment." He moved closer, his red eyes gentle despite their inhuman color. "And I care because it's who I am, what I've chosen to be. I've lived long enough to see what unchecked cruelty does to the world. I've seen empires built on suffering collapse under their own rot. I decided centuries ago that my power would be used differently, that my realm would be a place where the vulnerable could find safety rather than becoming prey." "That's why you have laws about consent," Tessa realized. "About feeding?" "Yes. Too many of my kind view humans as nothing more than food sources, disposable and meaningless. I've spent 3 centuries building a different culture here, where vampires and humans can coexist with mutual respect and benefit." He paused, then added, "Though I won't pretend it's always easy. There are vampires who chafe under my rules, who think I'm too soft, too concerned with human well-being. But I'm old enough and strong enough that they don't challenge me openly." "How old are you? I mean, I know you said 300 years ruling this city, but I was born in 1242 in what's now Romania, but was then a very different world. I was turned in 1267 at 25 years old, and I've walked this earth for over 7 centuries. He said it matter-of-factly, as if discussing the weather rather than an incomprehensible span of time. "I've seen empires rise and fall, watched plagues devastate continents, witnessed humanity's capacity for both breathtaking beauty and unspeakable horror. It gives one perspective." Tessa tried to imagine living that long and couldn't. Her own 26 years felt like more than enough given how the last 2 had gone. "I need to ask you something," Justinian said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "Have you thought about what I offered last night? About your husband?" She had. She'd thought about little else during the few moments of half-wakefulness before exhaustion had pulled her back under. If you do something to him, what happens exactly? I need to understand. He'll disappear, Justinian said bluntly. It will look like he abandoned his life voluntarily, perhaps to escape debts or other obligations. His bank accounts will show large withdrawals. His car will be found abandoned somewhere far from here. The authorities will classify him as a missing person who likely chose to vanish, especially once they learn about his drinking problem and financial troubles. Eventually, he'll be declared legally dead, and you'll be free of him completely. And in reality, he'll face vampire justice, which is swift and final for someone who caused the harm he did. Justinian's eyes held hers steadily. I won't lie to you or soften what I'm offering. Your husband's actions put him under my jurisdiction, and my sentence for his crimes would be death. But I need you to understand that if you give me permission, there's no taking it back. I need you to be certain. Tessa thought about Michael, about the man she'd married, who'd been charming and attentive during their courtship, who'd seemed like everything she'd ever wanted, about how slowly the mask had slipped, revealing the monster underneath, about the first time he'd shoved her, then apologized so profusely she'd convinced herself it was an accident, about how the accidents had become patterns, the patterns had become routine, and the routine had become her prison. She thought about the children she'd wanted, the ones she'd stopped mentioning after Michael had made it clear what he thought of that idea, about the career she'd abandoned because he'd insisted on it, about the friends she'd lost because he'd driven them away with his jealousy and possessiveness, about the woman she'd been and the hollow shell she'd become. Do it, she said. I want him gone. I want to be free. Justinian studied her for a long moment, and she had the sense he was weighing something important. Finally, he nodded. Give me his full name and your address. I'll handle the rest. Michael Thornwell. She recited their address, the house they'd bought together that had become her prison. He works at the industrial complex on 5th, usually gets home around 7 if he's not stopping at a bar first. He drives a blue pickup truck with a dent in the front bumper from where he hit a mailbox last month. Good, that's helpful. Justinian pulled out a phone that looked like cutting-edge technology, typing notes. I'll have my people begin surveillance immediately. Within 48 hours, Michael Thornwell will cease to be a problem. The finality in his voice sent a shiver through her. She'd just ordered her husband's death, she realized. She should feel guilty, horrified, something. Instead, all she felt was relief so intense it made her dizzy. What about me? She asked. After he's gone, what happens to me? That's your choice. You can stay here under my protection for as long as you want. I can provide you with new identification, help you access your finances, set you up somewhere safe where you can start over. Or, if you prefer, I can arrange for you to leave the city entirely, start fresh somewhere Michael's shadow can't reach. He paused, then added quietly, You have options now, Tessa. Real ones. Your life belongs to you again. Tears stung her eyes again. She blinked them back, trying to process the enormity of what he was offering. Freedom, safety, choice. Things that had been systematically stripped away from her. Can I think about it? She asked. I don't want to impose on your hospitality, but I don't know what I want yet. I don't even know who I am anymore without Michael's voice in my head telling me I'm worthless. You can take all the time you need, Justinian assured her. This residence has been here for a century and will be here for centuries more. A few weeks or months of hosting you is nothing. Over the following days, Tessa began to understand what Justinian had meant about vampire society and his position within it. The residence wasn't just his home, it was a center of power, a court in all but name. Vampires came and went at night, always impeccably dressed, always treating Justinian with a deference that bordered on worship. She caught snippets of conversation about territories and blood treaties, about human organizations that needed to be influenced, about other vampires in other cities. Justinian kept her separate from most of it, ensuring she had privacy and space to heal. But sometimes she'd emerge from her room to find him in conference with others of his kind, and she'd get a glimpse of the king he truly was. He commanded with absolute authority, his voice brooking no argument, his presence filling whatever room he occupied. The other vampires, regardless of how ancient or powerful they might be, deferred to him without question. Yet, with her, he remained unfailingly gentle. He brought her books from his extensive library, recommended shows she might enjoy on the enormous television in one of the sitting rooms, and ensured she had whatever food or comfort she needed. He never touched her without permission, never invaded her space, never made her feel like a burden or an obligation. On the third day, he brought her a manila envelope. "Your identification, credit cards, and some personal effects from your house," he said. "My people retrieved them last night. Your husband was passed out drunk when they entered and never stirred. They also recovered your phone, laptop, and some clothing I'm told you seemed particularly attached to." Tessa opened the envelope with shaking hands. Her wallet was there, driver's license and credit cards intact. Her phone, its case cracked but functional. The silver necklace her grandmother had left her, which she'd been afraid to wear around Michael in case he broke it during one of his rages. A photograph of her parents, dead for 5 years now, who'd never known what their son-in-law was really like. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is thank you. There's more." Justinian handed her a separate folder. "I had my financial people look into your accounts. Your name was on everything, but Michael had set them up so you needed his approval for any transaction over $50. That's been changed. You now have sole access to everything. There's also a court order I had expedited that freezes his ability to touch any of the assets. If he tries, he'll be immediately flagged and arrested for violating a protective order." "A protective order? I didn't file one." "No, but a very sympathetic judge was convinced that you had, and that the paperwork had simply been misfiled. Michael received official notice this morning." Justinian's expression was neutral, but she caught the hint of satisfaction beneath. "He'll be watched now. If he tries to find you, tries to access your money, tries anything at all, there will be consequences even before my people intervene." Tessa looked at the documents, seeing her name on bank accounts with balances that made her gasp. She'd known they had savings. Michael had always insisted on it, but she hadn't realized how much. Enough to start over anywhere she wanted. Enough to be truly free. "How did you do all this?" she asked. "I have connections throughout the city. Judges, lawyers, bankers, people who owe me favors or understand that cooperation with my interests serves their own." He said it without arrogance, just stating facts. Human society has many cracks and crevices. When you've had centuries to learn them, it becomes relatively simple to move through them efficiently. That night, Tessa couldn't sleep. She lay in the comfortable bed, staring at the painted stars on the ceiling, thinking about Michael and what was coming for him. She still didn't feel guilty. Instead, she felt something like anticipation, the way you might feel before a test result that would determine your future. She got up and padded through the quiet residence. The candles still burned despite the late hour, casting their steady golden light. She found Justinian in what she'd come to think of as his study, a room lined with books in dozens of languages, some bound in leather so old it looked ready to crumble. He was reading by candlelight, his white hair falling forward over his shoulder, looking like something out of a painting. He glanced up as she entered. "Can't sleep?" "Too much on my mind." She hesitated in the doorway. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Why don't you have electricity? Or at least, why do you use so many candles? You clearly have modern technology. I've seen your phone, the kitchen appliances, the television." A small expression that might have been amusement crossed his face. "Habit, mostly. I grew up in an era of candlelight and never lost my appreciation for it. There's something alive about flame that electric light lacks. It moves, breathes, responds to air currents. It's warmer, more honest somehow." He gestured to the chair across from him. "But that's not really what you came to ask me, is it?" Tessa settled into the chair, drawing her knees up. She was wearing one of the soft nightgowns she'd found in the wardrobe, far more modest than the torn thing she'd arrived in. "When will it happen?" she asked quietly. When will it be done?" "Tomorrow night. My people have established his patterns. He stops at a bar after work, drinks for several hours, then drives home. Tomorrow he won't make it home. He'll take a wrong turn, end up somewhere isolated, and face justice." Justinian's red eyes held hers steadily. "If you want to stop this, now is the time. Once it's set in motion, I won't be able to prevent it." "I don't want to stop it." The certainty in her own voice surprised her. "I want him gone. I want to know he'll never hurt anyone else the way he hurt me." He won't, Justinian promised. After tomorrow night, Michael Thornwell will be nothing but a fading memory and some paperwork to process. They sat in silence for a while, comfortable despite the weight of what they'd discussed. Tessa watched the candlelight play across Justinian's features, highlighting the sharp angles of his face, the impossible perfection of his bone structure. He was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at directly, like staring at a marble statue of some ancient god. "Can I ask you something else?" she said finally. "Of course. Do you ever get lonely? Living for centuries, watching humans age and die while you stay the same?" Justinian was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "Yes," he said simply. "Immortality is a magnificent gift and a terrible curse. You learn to love carefully, knowing that anyone human you care for will leave you eventually, either through natural death or because the agelessness becomes too much for them to bear. You collect memories like others, collect photographs, because memories are all that remain when everyone you've known has turned to dust. Is that why you surround yourself with other vampires? So you have companions who'll last? Partially. Though vampire relationships are complicated by power dynamics and centuries of history. We're not a naturally social species. We're apex predators who've learned to cooperate out of necessity and mutual benefit. True friendship among vampires is rare. Rarer still is finding someone, human or vampire, who sees you rather than what you represent." Tessa thought she understood what he meant. "They see the king, not Justinian." "Exactly." He turned his gaze back to her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You're one of the few people in decades who's simply spoken to me, not to my crown or my power. Perhaps it's because you were too desperate when we met to care about politics. Or perhaps it's simply who you are. I think when someone finds you bleeding and terrified in their garage, it establishes a different dynamic than normal," Tessa said, aiming for lightness. "Indeed," Justinian's lips quirked in what might have been a smile. "Though I find I prefer this dynamic. It's refreshing." They talked until nearly dawn, about nothing and everything. Justinian told her stories of his mortal life, of growing up in a world where death was commonplace and life was brutal. He told her about his turning, about the vampire who'd seen potential in him and offered immortality as a gift. He told her about the early years of confusion and bloodlust, before he'd learned control and purpose. In turn, Tessa found herself opening up about her own life, about her parents, who died in a car accident shortly before she met Michael, about how vulnerable she'd been, how perfectly Michael had positioned himself as her savior and protector, about the slow erosion of her sense of self, the way he'd systematically isolated her and broken her down until she'd believed his version of reality. "He told me I was lucky he put up with me," she admitted, "that no one else would want someone as stupid and worthless as I was, and I believed him. I actually believed I should be grateful for the beatings because at least it meant he cared enough to try to fix me." "That's not love," Justinian said, his voice hard. "That's not even close to love. Love doesn't diminish or destroy. Real love sees your worth and cherishes it, protects it, helps it grow. What he did to you was systematic abuse designed to make you dependent and compliant. I know that now. I think I knew it then, deep down, but knowing something and being able to act on it are different things." She pulled the nightgown tighter around herself. "I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if I could just figure out what I was doing wrong, he'd go back to being the man I married. But that man never really existed, did he? It was always a mask." "Likely? Yes. Men like Michael are skilled at presenting false faces until they have their victims trapped." Justinian leaned forward, his expression intent. "But you survived him, Tessa. You found the strength to run when it mattered most. That takes courage most people never need to discover in themselves." "It doesn't feel like courage. It feels like I should have done it sooner, before I wasted 2 years of my life." "Those years weren't wasted. They taught you exactly what you won't accept in your life going forward. They showed you your own resilience, and they brought you here, to safety, to a chance at building something better." He paused, then added quietly, "I don't believe in fate, but I believe in significant moments. Your decision to run, to choose that particular garage, to let me help you, those were significant. They changed the trajectory of your life." They changed everything, Tessa agreed softly. The next evening, Justinian came to find her as she was reading in the library. She'd discovered a collection of classic novels and had lost herself in Jane Eyre, finding uncomfortable parallels and strange comfort in Rochester's secrets and Jane's determination to maintain her sense of self. "It's done," he said simply. Tessa set the book aside, her hands suddenly cold. "Michael?" "Is gone. It was quick and clean. His truck was found abandoned near the state border with evidence suggesting he planned to disappear. His bank accounts show large cash withdrawals over the past week. My people are skilled at creating digital trails. By tomorrow, the police will have written him off as a man who chose to run from his problems. In a few months, you can have him declared legally dead and move forward completely free." She waited for the guilt to hit, for horror at what she'd sanctioned. Instead, she felt only relief so profound it made her lightheaded. "Thank you," she whispered. Justinian moved closer, his presence steady and reassuring. "How do you feel?" "Free." The word came out on a breath. "Terrified and free. I keep waiting for him to burst through the door, to drag me back, to make me pay for leaving. But he can't anymore, can he? He's really gone. He's really gone. You'll never have to fear him again." Tessa stood and, without thinking, threw her arms around Justinian. He went still for a moment, clearly surprised, then carefully returned the embrace. His body was cool against hers, unnaturally so, but solid and real. She felt safe in a way she'd forgotten was possible. "Thank you," she said again, her voice muffled against his chest. "Thank you for saving me, for believing me, for caring when you didn't have to." "Tessa," he said softly, and the way he said her name made something in her chest tighten. His arms around her were gentle but firm, protective without being constraining. "You're welcome. You're safe now, I promise." They stood like that for a long moment, and Tessa became aware of details, the way Justinian smelled like winter and cedar, the complete absence of a heartbeat in his chest, the careful way he held her as if afraid she might break. When she finally pulled back, she found him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just—" He seemed to search for words. "You're remarkably resilient. Most humans who've been through what you have would still be shattered, but you're already beginning to heal, to reclaim yourself." "I had a good sanctuary," Tessa said, "and a good protector." Something flickered in his red eyes, there and gone too quickly for her to identify. He stepped back, putting careful distance between them. "You should rest," he said. "Tomorrow we can discuss what comes next for you. Where you want to go, what you want to do. You have options now." But as Tessa returned to her room, she found herself not thinking about leaving. Instead, she was thinking about Justinian's arms around her, about the way he'd made her feel safe for the first time in years, about how comfortable she'd become in his presence despite everything that should have made her afraid. She was falling for him, she realized with a start. For a vampire. For someone who'd lived for centuries and would continue living long after she was dust. For a king who commanded legions and controlled a secret world she was only beginning to understand. It was absurd, impossible, and absolutely, undeniably true. Over the following weeks, Tessa found herself increasingly drawn into Justinian's world. He never pushed, never demanded, but he also didn't hide things from her. When vampires came to discuss territory disputes or blood treaties, he invited her to observe if she wanted. When he held court, and that's what it was, she realized, a formal hearing where vampires brought their problems and concerns to their king, he explained the intricacies of the laws and customs that governed them. She learned that vampire society was ancient and complex, built on hierarchies that had existed for millennia. There were rules about feeding territories, about turning humans, about interactions with human governments. Justinian's realm was considered progressive by vampire standards, with its emphasis on consent and mutual benefit. Other territories, he told her, operated more like the human conception of vampires, predatory, secretive, treating humans as livestock rather than sentient beings deserving of respect. "There are approximately 50,000 vampires worldwide," he explained one evening as they sat in his study. "Roughly 5,000 in North America, about 800 in this city alone. We're outnumbered by humans 10,000 to 1, which is why cooperation and secrecy are essential. If humans truly understood what we were and organized against us, we'd be eradicated within a generation despite our advantages. So you hide, Tessa said. You pretend to be human. We integrate. We own businesses, hold positions of influence, move through your world as if we belong there. Most humans never notice the pale skin or the avoidance of sunlight or the fact that we never eat in public. Those who do notice usually rationalize it away: medical condition, photosensitivity, personal preference. Humans are remarkably skilled at explaining away things that don't fit their worldview. What about sunlight? Tessa asked. Does it really kill you? Not immediately, but yes, it's lethal. Extended exposure causes our bodies to break down at a cellular level, essentially burning from the inside out. It's extraordinarily painful and takes only minutes to become fatal for younger vampires. Older ones like me can endure a bit more, but not much. That's why we're strictly nocturnal. And the other myths? Crosses, garlic, running water? Justinian's lips quirked. Superstition, mostly. Crosses are meaningless. I'm not a demon, just a different species with different biological needs. Garlic is unpleasant because our senses are heightened and it's pungent, but it won't harm us. Running water is actually problematic, though we're significantly weakened if fully submerged, something about the living nature of moving water conflicting with our undead state. We can cross it, but we don't like to. What about stakes through the heart? That will kill anything if you do it properly. We're not unique in that regard. He paused, then added, decapitation works too, as does fire. We're difficult to kill, but not impossible. Just significantly more resilient than humans. Tessa absorbed all this, fascinated despite herself. And feeding, you said it has to be consensual here. Yes. In my realm, vampires feed only from willing donors. We have arrangements with certain humans who provide blood regularly in exchange for various benefits: money, protection, access to our social networks. It's a transaction, mutually beneficial and carefully regulated. Any vampire who feeds against someone's will is executed, no exceptions. Have you ever, Tessa hesitated, have you ever broken your own rules? Justinian's expression went distant. Once, a very long time ago, when I was newly turned and didn't understand control yet. I killed a woman while feeding, drained her completely. Her face still haunts me 7 centuries later. It's why I established the laws I did, why I'm so strict about enforcement. I know what it is to be the monster, and I refuse to allow my realm to become a haven for others, like what I once was. The vulnerability in his admission made Tessa's chest ache. She reached out, taking his hand before she could second-guess herself. His fingers were cool, his skin smooth as marble, but he laced his fingers through hers and held on like she was an anchor. You're not a monster, she said firmly. Monsters don't spend centuries building systems to protect the vulnerable. They don't care about consent or justice or doing better. Thank you, Justinian said quietly. Though I sometimes wonder if I'm simply a monster who's learned better manners. I think you're a good man who happens to be a vampire. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and Tessa felt the weight of his centuries in that gaze. You see me very kindly. I see you clearly, she corrected. You saved my life, Justinian. You gave me back my freedom when I thought I'd lost it forever. You've shown me more genuine care and respect in a few weeks than my husband did in 2 years. I know exactly what you are, and I'm still here, still choosing to stay. Is that what you're doing? Choosing to stay? The question hung between them, heavy with implication. Tessa knew what he was really asking. Was she staying because she felt obligated, because she had nowhere else to go, or because she wanted to be here with him? I'm choosing to stay, she confirmed. I'm choosing you. Justinian's hand tightened on hers. Tessa, you need to understand what that means. I'm not human. I'll never age, never change. If you stay with me, if this becomes what I think we both want it to become, you'll grow older while I remain frozen at 25. Eventually, people will notice. Your friends, your family, society at large. It becomes complicated very quickly. I don't have family anymore, and I lost all my friends when Michael isolated me from them. Tessa moved closer, her other hand coming up to touch his face. His skin was cool, impossibly smooth, perfect in the way art was perfect rather than life. I'm not saying I have all the answers or that I've thought through every complication, but I know I feel safer and more valued with you than I ever have with anyone else. I know I want to explore this connection between us, and I know that your being a vampire doesn't frighten me. It's just part of who you are. You should be frightened, Justinian said, but his hand came up to cover hers, holding it against his cheek. I'm dangerous, Tessa. I've killed. I'll kill again when necessary. I command creatures who view humans as prey. My world is one of politics and power plays and ancient grudges that make human conflicts look like children's squabbles. I know, and you've been nothing but gentle with me. You've respected my boundaries, cared for my needs, treated me like I matter. That's what I'm choosing, not the vampire king with his crown and his power, but Justinian, who brings me books and cooks me dinner and talks with me until dawn about everything and nothing. She watched emotions flicker across his usually controlled features: hope, fear, desire, hesitation. Finally, he leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. I want this, he admitted quietly. I want you, more than I've wanted anything in decades. But I need you to be sure, Tessa. I need you to understand that vampire relationships are intense, consuming. We don't love casually or lightly. If I let myself fall for you completely, if I claim you as mine, it's forever. Not just your lifetime, but forever. I'll carry you in my heart long after you're gone, for centuries of loneliness and memory. Then maybe I don't want just my lifetime, Tessa heard herself say. Maybe I want forever too. Justinian pulled back enough to meet her eyes. You're talking about turning, becoming vampire. Is that possible? Could you turn me? Yes, but Tessa, you need to understand what you'd be giving up. Your humanity, your mortality, your chance at a normal life. You'd be frozen at your current age forever, never able to walk in sunlight again, needing blood to survive. You'd have to fake your death, leave behind anyone from your old life, become someone new. It's not a decision to make lightly or quickly. I know, and I'm not saying I want it right now today. But eventually, she met his crimson gaze steadily. I've already lost everything that mattered from my old life. My parents are dead. Michael saw to it that I have no friends, no career, no connections worth saving. Becoming vampire wouldn't be losing things, it would be gaining everything. Time with you, real safety, a chance to be part of something larger than myself. You'd have to be sure, Justinian insisted. Turning is irreversible. Once you become vampire, there's no going back. And it's not guaranteed to work. Some humans die during the transformation rather than rising as vampires. I couldn't bear it if I turned you and lost you in the process. I'm not asking for it now, Tessa repeated. I'm saying it's something I'd consider eventually, if this between us continues to grow. I want to know it's a possibility, that I'm not just choosing to love someone I'll inevitably lose to time. Justinian was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing patterns on her hand. Finally he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I haven't allowed myself to truly love someone in over a century. The last time I did, she was human, and I watched her age and die while I remained unchanged. It broke something in me that took decades to repair. I swore I wouldn't do that again, wouldn't subject myself or anyone else to that pain. But, Tessa prompted gently, but you walked into my garage covered in bruises and blood, and something in me recognized something in you. A kindred spirit, maybe. Someone who understood what it was to be damaged and still keep fighting. And every day you've been here, that recognition has deepened into something more, something I'm terrified to name, because naming it makes it real. Name it anyway, Tessa urged. I'm falling in love with you, Justinian said, and the words seemed to cost him. I'm falling in love with your strength and your resilience, and the way you look at me like I'm just a man rather than a monster or a king. I'm falling in love with your questions and your curiosity and the way you've claimed space in my home like you belong here. And it terrifies me, because I know how this ends. Either I lose you to time, or I turn you and potentially kill you in the process, or I turn you successfully and you eventually come to resent the immortality I've given you. Or, Tessa said softly, you turn me successfully and we have centuries together. That's an option too. It is, he admitted. It's the option I want so badly I can barely think of anything else. But I won't rush you into this decision. I won't let you choose immortality because you're running from your past rather than running toward a future you genuinely want. That's fair. Tessa leaned in, closing the distance between them until their lips were almost touching. Can I kiss you? Is that allowed? Justinian's laugh was surprised and genuine. Allowed? Tessa, I'm the king. I make the rules. And right now, the only rule I care about is that you're certain this is what you want. I'm certain, she breathed, and closed the final distance. Kissing Justinian was like nothing she'd ever experienced. His lips were cool, gentle at first, testing and asking permission with every movement. She opened for him, and he deepened the kiss with a control that spoke of centuries of practice, but an eagerness that felt entirely focused on her. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone with careful reverence. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, or at least she wasn't sure vampires needed to breathe, Tessa felt like something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Justinian looked at her with an expression of wonder that made him seem young despite his age, vulnerable despite his power. I love you, she said, because it was true and needed to be spoken. I know it's fast, I know it's probably insane, but I love you, Justinian Xerxes. You saved me, and now I want to build something with you, something real and lasting. I love you too, he replied, and hearing him say it made her heart soar. And we will build something real, something lasting, however long you want, whatever form that takes. You're mine now, Tessa Thornwell. Mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to love, and I take that responsibility seriously. They stayed up talking until dawn again that night, but the conversation was different now. They spoke about possibilities and futures, about what a life together might look like. Justinian explained more about vampire culture, about what turning would entail if she chose it, about the responsibilities and privileges of being bonded to the vampire king. There would be jealousy, he warned, other vampires who think you're using me for power or status, humans who see you as a traitor to your species. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is, Tessa pointed out, and I'd face all of that with you beside me. That makes it manageable. Over the following months, their relationship deepened and solidified. Tessa met more of Justinian's inner circle, the vampires he trusted most. They were initially wary of her, this human who'd captured their king's attention, but gradually accepted her presence as they saw how happy she made him. She learned the intricacies of vampire politics, began to understand the delicate balance Justinian maintained between the human and vampire worlds. She also began to explore the city again, reclaiming her independence and sense of self. Justinian had his people watch over her discreetly whenever she went out, ensuring her safety without smothering her freedom. She returned to school part-time, starting to rebuild the education Michael had made her abandon. She reconnected with one of her old friends, explaining carefully that she'd left Michael and started over, leaving out the vampires and murder and everything else that would sound insane. Life, impossibly, became good. Better than good, it became joyful in ways she'd never thought possible. 6 months after she'd stumbled into Justinian's garage, Tessa made her decision. I want to be turned, she told him one evening as they sat in his study. I want forever with you. Justinian set down the book he'd been reading, giving her his full attention. Are you certain? Truly certain? There's no undoing this, Tessa. I'm certain. I've had half a year to think about it, to understand what I'd be choosing. I want this. I want you. And I want the life we can build together, not just decades, but centuries. I want time enough to see the world change, to grow with you rather than away from you. I want forever. Then you'll have it, Justinian promised. He stood, moving to kneel before her chair, taking both her hands in his. But we'll do this properly. In vampire culture, turning someone is essentially a marriage. You become bonded to me in ways that go beyond human understanding. There are ceremonies, rituals, witnesses. I want to honor you and this choice properly. Tell me what that means, Tessa said. So he did. He explained the bonding ceremony, how she would stand before the vampire court and declare her intention to join their ranks, how Justinian would formally claim her as his intended, binding them together before the turn ever happened, how the turn itself would take place in private, intimate, just the two of them as he drained her to the point of death, and then gave her his blood to complete the transformation. It will hurt, he warned. Not the draining that's actually euphoric, one of the reasons humans willingly become donors. But the transformation after, when your body dies and reforms as something new, that's agony. You'll feel like you're burning from the inside out. It lasts hours, and there's nothing I can do to ease it except stay with you and promise it will end. I can endure pain, Tessa said steadily. I've endured worse. Not like this, but I'll be there every moment, and when you wake, when you rise as vampire, I'll teach you everything you need to know. We'll face eternity together. The bonding ceremony took place a month later, giving Tessa time to prepare herself mentally and emotionally. It was held in a grand hall beneath the city, accessible only to vampires, a space that had existed for centuries without human knowledge. The hall was carved from living rock, lit by thousands of candles that made the walls seem to glow. Hundreds of vampires filled the space, all of them dressed in formal attire that ranged from modern suits to clothing that looked like it belonged in museums. Tessa wore a gown Justinian had commissioned for her, deep midnight blue that brought out her eyes, simple and elegant. She stood before the assembled crowd, Justinian beside her in formal black embroidered with silver thread, and spoke the words that would bind their lives together. I, Tessa Thornwell, come before this court freely and of sound mind. I declare my intention to join your ranks, to become vampire, to leave my humanity behind and embrace the darkness and eternity you offer. I choose this not from desperation or coercion, but from love and genuine desire. I choose Justinian Xerxes as my bonded partner, my mate, my king. I give myself to him into this life with full knowledge of what I'm choosing and what I'm surrendering. Witness my choice and recognize my sincerity. Justinian spoke then, his voice carrying through the vast space with natural authority. I, Justinian Xerxes, king of this realm, accept Tessa Thornwell's declaration and her offer of herself. I claim her as mine, to protect and cherish and guide through the transformation and beyond. I take responsibility for her turning, for her education in our ways, for her place within our society. Should she rise successfully, she will be recognized as my bonded mate, with all the rights and protections that entails. Should she fall during transformation, her death will be mourned as that of one of our own. Witness my claim and recognize my commitment. The assembled vampires responded in unison, their voices creating a sound that raised the hair on Tessa's arms. Witnessed and recognized. May the turning be successful. May the bond be eternal. Then it was done. She was committed irrevocably to this path. The actual turning took place that night in Justinian's private chambers. He'd explained everything beforehand, walking her through each step so there would be no surprises. Now, as she sat on the edge of his bed, watching him light candles throughout the room, she felt surprisingly calm. "Are you afraid?" he asked, joining her. "A little," she admitted, "but more excited than afraid." "Is that strange?" "No. It shows you've truly accepted what's coming." He took her hand, raising it to his lips. "I love you, Tessa. Whatever happens, know that. You've brought light back into my existence, reminded me what it is to feel rather than simply endure. Thank you for choosing this, for choosing me." "I love you too," she said, "now and forever." Justinian cradled her close, positioning them comfortably on the bed. "It starts with feeding," he murmured against her throat. "I'll drink until your heart is barely beating, until you're on the edge of death. Then I'll give you my blood, and the transformation will begin. Stay with me as long as you can. Don't fight the dying, it's necessary for the rebirth." "I trust you," Tessa said, and she did, absolutely. She felt his cool breath against her skin, felt his lips brush her pulse point. Then there was a sharp sting as his fangs pierced her throat, and immediately after, a wave of pleasure so intense she gasped. Justinian had been right, being fed from felt euphoric, every pull of blood sending cascades of bliss through her body. She felt floaty, distant, like she was dissolving into pure sensation. The pleasure began to fade as her heartbeat slowed. She grew cold, frighteningly so, her extremities going numb, her vision darkened around the edges. She tried to say Justinian's name but couldn't form the words. She was dying, she realized distantly, This was what death felt like. Then something warm touched her lips, his blood, she understood. She drank instinctively, and immediately her body convulsed. The pain he'd warned her about hit like a tsunami, burning through every nerve ending she possessed. She was dimly aware of screaming, of Justinian's arms around her, of his voice speaking steady reassurances. But the agony was all-consuming. It felt like hours, days, eternity. Her body was remaking itself at a fundamental level, human biology giving way to something other. She felt her heart stop, felt the final human breath leave her lungs, felt death claim her absolutely. Then, like a light switch flipping, everything changed. The pain vanished. Her eyes opened, and the world was transformed. Colors were more vivid, almost painfully bright despite the candlelight. She could hear everything, the whisper of air currents, Justinian's clothes rustling as he breathed unnecessarily, sounds from the floors above them that should have been impossible to detect. Scents flooded her awareness, blood and stone and candle wax, and Justinian's particular scent, now recognizable as fundamentally vampire rather than simply unusual. She sat up, movements fluid in ways her human body had never managed. Justinian was watching her intently, worry clear in his crimson eyes that looked different now, she realized. She could see the ancient power in them, the predatory intelligence, details she'd missed as a human. "Tessa," he said carefully, "how do you feel?" She took inventory. No heartbeat that was strange but not frightening. Her body felt strong, powerful, like she could run for miles without tiring. And underneath everything was a new hunger, a burning need she instinctively recognized as thirst for blood. "I feel incredible," she said, then stopped, surprised by her own voice. It sounded the same but somehow richer, more resonant. "Is this real? Did it work?" Joy broke across Justinian's face like sunrise. "It worked. You're vampire, Tessa. You survived the transformation." She launched herself at him, and he caught her easily, both of them laughing with relief and happiness. She kissed him fiercely, noting that his temperature no longer felt cool to her. They matched now, both room temperature, both undead and alive in ways that defied human understanding. "I love you," she said between kisses. "Forever, just like you promised." "Forever," Justinian agreed. "I'm going to spend centuries showing you exactly how much you mean to me." The following months were a blur of adjustment and learning. Justinian taught her to feed without killing, to move through the world as vampire, to manage the enhanced senses and strength. She learned to hunt, to identify willing donors, to understand the complex etiquette of vampire society. She took a new name publicly. Tessa Thornwell had to officially die, so she became Thalia Xavier, Justinian's bonded mate and queen consort of the vampire realm. It was hard sometimes. She mourned her humanity in unexpected moments, missed the simple pleasure of sunlight and daytime activities. But Justinian was there for every difficulty, supporting her through the transition with endless patience, and the benefits far outweighed the losses. She was stronger now, not just physically but emotionally. She'd survived abuse, escaped death, chosen rebirth, and claimed a place in a world humans didn't know existed. She walked through the nighttime city with her head high, Justinian at her side, and felt truly free for the first time in her life. 5 years after she'd stumbled into that garage, Tessa stood with Justinian on the balcony of their residence, looking out over the city lights. Her city now, part of the realm she helped govern alongside him. She'd carved out a role for herself, working with human victims of violence, using vampire resources to create safe houses and support systems that operated in the shadows. She'd become someone who mattered, who made a difference, who was valued for who she was rather than just who she belonged to. "Do you ever regret it?" Justinian asked quietly. "Choosing this life?" Tessa turned to him, taking his hand. He was as beautiful now as he'd been that first night, unchanged and unchanging, but she saw him differently now. Not as the impossibly perfect vampire king, but as Justinian, her partner, her love, her choice. "Never," she said firmly. "You gave me everything, Justinian. You gave me safety when I was being destroyed. You gave me freedom when I was trapped. You gave me love when I'd forgotten what that meant. And you gave me forever, which is exactly how long I want to spend with you." He pulled her close, and she melted into his embrace, marveling as she always did at how perfectly they fit together. Two broken people who'd found each other in the darkness and built something luminous from their shared pain. "I was dead long before I became vampire," she murmured against his chest. "Michael was killing me slowly, piece by piece. You brought me back to life in every way that matters. This being vampire, being with you, having eternity ahead of us, this is living. Really, truly living." "Then we'll live magnificently," Justinian promised, "every night for as long as time runs, you and me, facing whatever comes together." "Together," Tessa agreed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that tasted of blood and love, and forever. The moon rose over the city, silver light spilling across buildings where humans slept unaware of the supernatural world that surrounded them. In his residence, the vampire king held his queen, and both of them smiled with the contentment of souls who'd found their home in each other. The future stretched before them, uncertain but no longer frightening, because they would face it together. Tessa had run from death and found eternal life. She'd stumbled into a garage broken and terrified, and emerged from it reborn, powerful and deeply loved. It was a better ending than any story, better than any dream she'd allowed herself during those dark years of her marriage. It was happy and real and hers, and she had forever to enjoy it.